The diner was closed, the parking lot was empty, and a 23-year-old waitress named Sloane Mercer was crouched behind a dumpster in the rain, pressing her hands against a stranger's chest wound, trying to remember if she'd ever actually paid attention during that one CPR class her community college had made her take 3 years ago. She hadn't. But she was trying anyway. The man was enormous, dark coat soaked through, eyes open but barely focused, like he was trying to hold on to consciousness the same way a person holds a door against the wind, with everything they have, knowing it's not going to be enough. "Stay with me," Sloane told him. Not because she thought it would help, because she didn't know what else to say. He looked up at her and said, with what seemed like genuine irritation, "I don't even know you." "No," she said, "but I know you're bleeding, and I'm the only one here, so you're stuck with me." His name, she would find out later, was Adrian Sorrell, and the man who'd put 3 bullets in him before speeding off into the dark was someone Adrian had trusted with his life for 11 years. What Sloane Mercer didn't know, what she couldn't possibly have known, crouched behind a diner on Route 9 in the rain, was that by pressing her hands against that wound, she had just stepped directly into the middle of a war. Before we go any further, I want you to do something for me. If this story has you already, hit that like button and subscribe to Rosie's Romance Library, and drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. Sloane Mercer had been working the closing shift at Patsy's Diner for 2 years. She knew the regulars. She knew which booths had wobbly legs. She knew that the coffee maker in the back made a sound like a dying animal at exactly 11:15 every single night, and that if you hit the side of it twice with your palm, it would quiet down and keep working. She did not know anything about the Sorrell family. Most people in Caldwell, Georgia didn't. Not really. They knew the name the way you know a storm is coming, by the way the air changes, something heavy settling in, something that makes the birds go quiet. The Sorrells had run operations out of the Georgia-Tennessee corridor for 30 years. Legitimate businesses on the surface, construction, commercial real estate, logistics. Underneath, the kind of enterprise that kept federal agents busy and defense attorneys very comfortably paid. Adrian Sorrell was the youngest of 3 brothers, 41 years old, the one people called the quiet one, which in this context did not mean gentle. It meant the one who didn't need to raise his voice, the one whose silence was louder than most men's threats. Sloane had no idea about any of this when she walked out to the parking lot at 11:47 on a Thursday night to toss a bag of trash and heard something she initially thought was a car backfiring. It wasn't a car backfiring. She found him behind the dumpster. He'd made it maybe 40 feet from where it happened, dragging himself through the wet asphalt on instinct alone. She almost screamed. She almost ran back inside and locked the door and called 911 and let the professionals handle it. She almost did all of those things. Instead, she dropped to her knees and put her hands on the wound. "Don't move," she said. "I'm going to call an ambulance. No ambulance." His voice was steadier than it had any right to be. "Sir, you've been shot. I'm aware." A pause. "No ambulance. No police." Sloane looked at him. Really looked. The kind of expensive coat that didn't belong in a diner parking lot. The watch on his wrist that probably cost more than her car. The way he was already trying to push himself upright, despite the fact that he was very clearly losing. "If I don't call anyone," she said slowly, "you're going to die behind my dumpster, then call someone who isn't the police." He reached into his coat with a hand that was shaking badly and pulled out a phone. "Speed dial 3. Tell them where I am. Then go back inside and forget you saw me," she called. A man answered on the second ring, listened to her say the address, and told her not to let Adrian move. That was it. No questions, no panic. Like this was something that happened on Thursdays. Sloane should have gone back inside. She didn't go back inside. She stayed on the asphalt, next to a man she'd never met, and kept pressure on the wound, and told him completely mundane things about her life. That she was supposed to have tomorrow off. But Linda called in sick again, that the coffee maker was possessed, that she'd been meaning to get a new car for 8 months but kept putting it off. She talked because the silence felt dangerous, because as long as she was talking, she could tell he was listening. And as long as he was listening, he was still there. He didn't say much. But at one point he turned his head slightly and looked at her with those barely focused eyes and said, "Why are you still here?" Sloane pressed harder on the wound. "Because someone has to be." 2 men arrived in 12 minutes. No sirens, no lights. They loaded Adrienne Sorel into a black SUV with the kind of practiced efficiency that told her this was not the first time. One of them handed Sloane a cloth to wipe her hands and told her to go inside, keep the lights off, and not mention this to anyone. She went inside. She kept the lights off. She did not sleep for the rest of the night. The next morning, there was an envelope on the front seat of her car. She hadn't heard anyone open it, hadn't heard anything. Inside's $10,000 in cash and a note that said, "Thank you, consider yourself square with us." Sloane stared at that note for a long time. Then she put the envelope in her glove compartment, drove to work, and told herself that was the end of it. It wasn't the end of it. 4 days later, 2 men came into the diner at closing time. Not the same 2 from the parking lot. These ones had the wrong kind of eyes, the kind that were doing math about her before they'd even sat down. They ordered coffee they didn't drink. They asked questions that weren't really questions. "How long have you worked here? You live around here? You see anything unusual last week?" Sloane had grown up in Caldwell. She knew when a conversation was an interrogation wearing a costume. "No," she said. "It's been pretty quiet." One of them put a card on the table when they left. No name, just a number. "In case you remember anything," he said. The moment their car pulled out of the lot, Sloane went to the back office and called the only number she had, the one she'd dialed from Adrienne Sorel's phone 4 nights ago. "Someone just came asking about last Thursday," she said when the man answered. "2 of them. They left a card with a number on it." A pause. Then, "Don't call that number. Don't throw the card away, either. Where are you right now?" "Work. Stay there." Adrienne Sorel walked through the door of Patsy's Diner 40 minutes later. He looked different, upright, steady, a bandage visible above the collar of a fresh dark shirt. He moved carefully, like someone accounting for pain, but he moved with the same controlled weight she'd noticed in the parking lot. The kind of presence that changed a room's temperature. He sat at the counter and looked at her. "You should have taken the money and moved on," he said. Not unkindly. "I thought I did." Sloane set a coffee in front of him out of habit. "Who were those men? People who want to know what I know, and who I told it to. I don't know anything. They don't know that." He wrapped both hands around the coffee mug. "The man who shot me, his name is Warren Budd. He's been working with my family for 11 years. He's also been cooperating with a federal investigation for the last 2 of them, and now he needs to make sure no one can confirm where he was that night." Sloane absorbed this slowly. "So he shot you. He thought he was more thorough than he was, and now he's worried about a waitress who called an ambulance. Not an ambulance." A slight pause. "But, yes." Sloane looked at him. "What does that mean for me?" Adrienne Sorel met her eyes and didn't look away. "It means you have a problem you didn't ask for, and it means I owe you a debt I intend to pay." He said it simply, like it was a fact rather than a promise, like the sentence had weight behind it that didn't need decoration. She said, "I don't want to be inside whatever this is." "I know." He stood, left the coffee untouched. "But you already are, so the question is whether you're inside it alone or with someone who can keep you safe." He left his phone number on a napkin. Not the same one, a different one, his own. Sloane looked at it for a long time after he walked out. Then she folded it and put it in her apron pocket. That night, someone broke into her apartment. She wasn't home. She'd stopped at the grocery store. She came back to a door that was slightly off from the way she'd left it. Sloane had grown up with 2 older brothers, both of whom had been into things they shouldn't have been, and she had learned early how to read a room that had been touched. A drawer not quite closed, a chair an inch from where it should be, small evidence of someone being careful. She stood in her doorway and did not go inside. She went back to her car, sat in it with the engine running, and called the number on the napkin. Adrienne Sorel picked up on the first ring. "Someone was in my apartment," she said. A pause. 3 seconds. "Are you inside?" "No, I'm in my car." "Stay in the car. Keep the doors locked. I'll be there in 20 minutes." He was there in 14. He walked through her apartment the same way she imagined he walked through every space. Methodically, quietly, like he was reading it. He checked things she wouldn't have thought to check. When he came back out to where she was waiting on the stairs, his expression hadn't changed, but something in his posture had tightened. "You can't stay here tonight," he said. "I'm not exactly rolling in safe house options." "I know. A beat. You'll come with me." Sloane laughed, not because it was funny, but because the alternative was something that felt too much like panic. "I don't know you. You kept your hands on a gunshot wound for 20 minutes for someone you didn't know," he said. "I think you can handle a car ride." She went. She told herself it was the practical choice. She told herself it was because she had no other options, which was largely true. She did not tell herself anything about the way he'd said, "I owe you a debt I intend to pay," because that felt like something she'd need to look at carefully, and this was not the moment. The house was 40 minutes outside Caldwell. Long driveway, no visible neighbors. The kind of property where the security system was not the visible kind. A woman met them at the door, mid-50s, silver hair, the kind of face that had been beautiful for a long time and had simply stayed that way. "This is Nell Parrish," Adrian said. "She runs the household. She'll get you a room and whatever you need." Nell Parrish looked at Sloane with the particular expression of a woman who had seen many things come through that door and had opinions about all of them. Then she simply said, "Are you hungry?" And when Sloane said yes, she nodded and led her to the kitchen. That first night, Sloane sat at a kitchen table in a stranger's house, eating soup she hadn't made while a woman she'd met an hour ago moved around the kitchen like a person entirely comfortable in her own domain. And she thought, "This is the strangest week of my life." She did not yet know how much stranger it was about to get. Adrian Sorrell's daughter arrived at noon the next day. She was 9 years old, and her name was Pia, and she had her father's eyes and her mother's unnerving stillness. And she stood at the entrance to the kitchen and looked at Sloane with the kind of direct assessment that most adults spend years learning to pretend they aren't doing. "Who are you?" Pia asked. "Sloane. I'm a guest. My dad doesn't have guests." She said it not rudely, just accurately, the way a kid states a fact they've observed repeatedly. "He has associates. And people who owe him things." "Which one are you?" Sloane almost laughed again. "Neither, actually. I'm someone he owes." Pia considered this, sat down across from her. "That's new," she said. She had been staying with Adrian's older sister in Savannah for 2 weeks. Sloane learned this from Nell later, a precaution taken when things had started to go sideways, a way of keeping Pia at a distance from whatever was unraveling. The sister had driven her back this morning because Adrian asked, and because Pia had apparently informed her aunt with full composure that she was done being kept away from her father. She sounds like him, Sloane thought. Whatever that means. She found out what it meant over the next 3 days, because Adrian Sorrell, a man who by all available evidence did not make small talk, did not explain himself, and did not allow anyone into his space without very specific reason, began, in small ways, to do exactly that. He brought her coffee in the morning without asking if she wanted it. He sat across from her at the kitchen table with a laptop and worked in silence that somehow didn't feel like dismissal. He answered her questions about what was happening. Not everything, but enough. He told her that Warren Budd had been feeding information to the FBI for 2 years, that the case he was building threatened not just the Sorrells, but a network of alliances that reached higher than most people would be comfortable knowing. That Budd needed Sloane gone, not because she knew anything, but because he couldn't afford a loose thread, and Sloane had watched him shoot someone and walk away. "What happens when they catch him?" Sloane asked. "When?" Adrian said, which told her something about how he thought about this. "What happens to you?" A pause. "That depends on choices made before the end." She looked at him. "Are you making a deal?" He was quiet for long enough that the silence was its own answer. "I've spent a long time protecting something that was worth protecting," he said finally. "Some of it still is. Some of it stopped being worth it a long time ago, and I kept going anyway." He looked out the window at the long driveway. "Pia's mother died 4 years ago, and I would very much like to be present for the rest of my daughter's life." Sloane didn't say anything. There didn't seem to be anything useful to say. "The man who shot me," Adrian continued, "did it because he thought I was about to make that deal. He was wrong about the timing. He wasn't wrong about what I intended. And now? Now he knows he didn't finish the job, which means he's going to do something desperate, and desperate men make choices that endanger people who are standing nearby. He looked at her directly. I need you to understand what that means. It means I'm still in the middle of it. Yes. Even if I hadn't called your number. Even if I'd just moved to my sister's couch and kept my head down. Probably. A beat. I'm sorry about that. Sloane thought about her apartment, her coffee maker, Linda always calling in sick, the ordinary architecture of her life that felt, suddenly, like something she'd walked away from without meaning to. Don't be sorry, she said. Just fix it. Something shifted in Adrian Sorrell's expression, something small and quick, like a window opening just slightly before someone thinks better of it. Yes, he said. That's the plan. On the fourth night, Pia came and found Sloane in the library. A room Sloane had discovered accidentally and then kept returning to because it was warm and it smelled like old paper and it felt like the least dangerous room in the house. Pia sat across from her in a large chair and tucked her feet underneath her and said, without preamble, My dad told me you helped him. I was there, Sloane said. I did what anyone would do. Pia looked at her with those quiet eyes. No, she said. They wouldn't. I've seen how people act around him. She paused. They're either afraid of him or they want something from him. You're not afraid. I'm a little afraid, Sloane said honestly. But not of him. Sloane thought about that. No, not of him. Pia nodded like this confirmed something she'd already worked out. Then she said, My mom used to say that the people worth trusting are the ones who stay after they find out what staying costs. Sloane felt something tighten in her chest. Your dad said she passed away 4 years ago. Same cadence Sloane had noticed in Adrian. Facts delivered cleanly, without performance. She was brave, too. He says I got it from her. A small pause. I think I got some of it from him. He just doesn't want to say that because he doesn't want me to think brave and dangerous are the same thing. Are they? Sloane asked. Pia considered it seriously, the way 9-year-olds consider things they actually care about. Not always, she said finally. But sometimes the only way to get to brave is through dangerous. Sloane thought about a parking lot in the rain, about hands that didn't know what they were doing but did it anyway. Yeah, she said quietly. I think you're right about that. The call came at 2:14 in the morning. Adrian knocked on her door 4 seconds later, already dressed, already moving with the kind of deliberate speed that didn't leave room for questions. Get up. We need to go. Sloane was dressed in 90 seconds. She'd been sleeping the way she imagined soldiers slept, not deeply. Ready. What happened? Warren Budd knows where we are. He was already moving down the hall. He had someone inside, one of my own people. The last sentence came out flat and controlled, which somehow made it worse. I have Pia. We need to move in the next 4 minutes. Pia was already up, standing in the hallway with a backpack, fully dressed, shoes on, like she had known this might happen and had prepared for it anyway. She looked at Sloane once, quickly, and then at her father, and she did not say anything or cry or panic. She just nodded. 9 years old, and she nodded like a soldier. Sloane felt something break open inside her that she couldn't name and didn't have time to examine. They went out a back exit she hadn't known was there, through a service corridor that smelled like cold concrete, to a garage that held 3 vehicles. Adrian put Pia in the back seat and handed Sloane the keys to the second car, a gray sedan, deliberately unremarkable. Drive directly south, he said. Don't use your phone. Stop for nothing. There's an address programmed in the navigation. It's a name I trust more than anyone still breathing. Tell him Adrian sent you. He'll know what to do. Sloane stared at him. Where are you going? I need to make sure we're not followed. That's not a plan. That's a... She stopped. You're going after him. Adrian said nothing, which was the same as saying yes. That's insane, she said. Probably. He looked at her with an expression she hadn't seen on him before. Not cold, not calculated. Something real and careful and aware of the weight of itself. You've kept my daughter's father breathing once already. I'd prefer to continue the trend. Sloane grabbed his arm without thinking. Don't do something stupid because you feel like you have to fix everything yourself. Something in his face went very still. There's a man out there, she said, who shot you and is now coming for your 9-year-old daughter because he wants to make sure no witnesses exist. and the witnesses include me. So I have a stake in how this ends, and I am telling you, don't you dare go be a hero and make Pia sit in some stranger's house, waiting to find out if she still has a father." Adrian Sorrell looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Get Pia to safety, and you? I'll be behind you." A pause. "I'll call the number I saved in that phone. It's the FBI agent whose name is Dana Harlow. She's been waiting for me to give her Warren Budd on record. If I make that call tonight, this ends without anyone else getting hurt." Sloan absorbed this. "You're turning yourself in. I'm settling a debt." He said it the same way he'd said "I intend to pay," like the sentence had been decided before he spoke it, and speaking was just the formality. "Some things I've done, I'll answer for. Some things I haven't. Warren Budd wanted to make sure I'd never get the chance to clarify which was which, and Pia? My sister in Savannah will take her while things are sorted. She won't be alone. A beat. And she has good taste in people who stay." Sloan looked at him. He was looking at her in a way that was quiet and direct and said several things that neither of them had words for, and possibly wasn't the right moment for anyway. "Go," he said. She went. The drive was 2 hours and 14 minutes, and Sloan Mercer spent most of it watching the rearview mirror and the road in equal measure, one hand on the wheel and one hand close to the phone on the seat beside her. Pia sat in the back in silence for the first hour. Then she said, "Is he going to be okay?" "Yes," Sloan said. She said it like she believed it. She was working on believing it. "You don't know that," Pia said. "Not accusatory, just accurate." "No," Sloan admitted. "But I know he's not someone who makes promises lightly. And he promised you he'd be there." Pia was quiet for a moment. "He said that?" "Not in those exact words. But yeah, he did." Pia looked out the window at the dark farmland passing at 70 miles an hour. "My mom used to say the world was full of people who meant well but couldn't follow through. She said the ones who could follow through were the ones worth building a life around." Sloan didn't answer. There was a pressure building behind her sternum that she recognized as the particular feeling of caring about what happened to someone she had no business caring about this much. Too late for that, she thought. The house at the end of the address belonged to a man named Theodore Galt, 60-some, weathered, with the permanently unimpressed option of someone who had stopped being surprised by things arriving at his door years ago. He opened it before they knocked, looked at Sloan, looked at Pia, and said, "Adrian, call ahead?" "He said to tell you he sent us," Sloan said. Theodore Galt stepped back from the door. "Come in. I've got coffee on." The call came 4 hours and 22 minutes later. Sloan was in a chair by the window, not pretending to sleep, watching the sky begin to do the slow work of turning from black to gray. Pia was actually asleep on the couch, finally, curled under a quilt that smelled like cedar, her backpack still looped around one arm the way a kid holds something they can't bear to set down. Adrian Sorrell's number came up on the phone. Sloan answered before the first ring finished. "It's done," he said. His voice was tired in a way she hadn't heard before. Not injured, just emptied out. "Warren Budd is in federal custody. Agent Harlow has a full deposition. The case is moving. Are you?" "I'm fine." A pause. "I'll be held for processing. It's going to take some time. A few months, more likely. But the deal is structured. I'll answer for my part, and I'll come home on the other side of it." Sloan pressed her hand flat against the windowsill. Outside, the first birds were beginning. "Pia's asleep," she said. She held together the whole drive. "Your kid is remarkable." "I know." She could hear it in those 2 words. Everything that a man who doesn't say much packs into the things he does say. "Sloan. Yeah. I know this isn't what you signed up for when you took a shift at that diner. No, and I know I don't have the right to ask for anything else from you. Adrian." "Yeah." "Shut up and tell me where to send letters." A pause, the kind that has weight. Then, quietly, "I'll get you the address." 14 months later, Adrian Sorrell walked out of a federal facility on a Tuesday morning in October. The air was cold and the sky was the particular blue that only happens in fall, and Pia was waiting with her aunt on the other side of the gate, and when she saw him she didn't run. She walked, which somehow said more. Sloan Mercer was there too. Not in front. Off to the side, near the car, giving the moment to the people it belonged to. She'd spent 14 months writing letters and driving to Savannah on weekends, and slowly becoming the kind of person who was part of a life she'd stumbled into on a rainy Thursday night. After a long time, Adrian walked toward her. He looked the same, a little thinner, eyes that had done a lot of thinking. He stopped a few feet away and looked at her the same way he had in the driveway on that last night. Quiet and direct, and full of things that didn't need more decoration than the silence already gave them. "You stayed," he said. Sloane shrugged, because some things were too simple and too enormous at the same time to deserve a complicated answer. Someone had to be. He looked at her for a moment longer. Then he almost smiled, just barely, the kind that you'd miss if you weren't watching for it. Pia appeared at his side and slid her hand into his without saying anything, and the three of them stood in a parking lot in the October light, while the world went on around them, ordinary and unaware, the way the world always goes on, around the moments that actually matter. There's a diner on Route 9 in Caldwell, Georgia, unremarkable from the outside. The coffee maker still makes us that sound at 11:15 every night. The booth by the window still has a wobbly leg, and somewhere between a dumpster and a parking lot, and 14 months of letters, and a cold October morning, a waitress, who didn't look the other way, discovered that sometimes the most dangerous choice you can make is also the one that leads you somewhere you were always supposed to end up. If this story reminded you that courage doesn't announce itself before it arrives, it just shows up in a parking lot and puts its hands on the wound, share this with someone who needs to hear it. Hit subscribe and leave a comment below, because the people who stay until the end of a story are exactly the kind of people I made this channel for.